Sound verbal behavior has to do with how we sound. So right now I am speaking and I am producing a sound. But my sound is different from how most people sound because I am listening to myself. And so in sound verbal behavior, the speaker is listening to him or to herself. When that happens, when the speaker listens to himself while he speaks, then something happens with the way in which that speaker is perceived by the listener. Because when the speaker hears his own sound, then there is kind of like a feedback mechanism that happens where the speaker becomes his own listener. And because of that, the speaker can completely relax into his own sound. And relaxing into our own sound while we speak is the ideal way of really communicating. Unfortunately, most of the time when people talk, they are not as totally at ease with their own sound as they could be when they would listen to themselves while they speak. Of course, we have to support each other in this process of listening to ourselves while we speak. So each speaker in sound verbal behavior listens to himself while he speaks. And consequently, we begin to reinforce the way of communicating in which we all feel completely at ease with our own sound, with our own sense of well-being, which is then enhanced and increased by the way in which we talk. So there's a lot to this because in our normal way of communicating, we obviously don't do this. Yeah, in our normal way of communicating, we are often getting stressed and anxious or frustrated or irritated. And there's all sorts of reasons why we are then no longer listening to what we are saying. And so we get carried away by what we are saying, but we are no longer listening to how we sound. If, however, we begin to understand that it is important to be in touch with our own sound and to embody our own sound, then we begin to, how do you say that, pull back, not push back, but you just step back, step back, and we say like, oh, wait a second, I was no longer listening to myself anymore. And each time we begin to recognize like, oh, so each time I start to sound aversive, when my voice begins to be more demanding and more coercive and more aversively sounding, then we are no longer listening to ourselves. And something is overtaking us at that moment. So another way of talking about sound verbal behavior is also to say that in sound verbal behavior we are conscious of what we're saying, but also of how we're saying it. And that combination of how you say it and what you say is also the congruence between verbal and non-verbal behavior, which by the way occurs because our listening behavior begins to synchronize with our speaking behavior. And that is why we need to listen to ourselves while we speak.